Good morning. This is Kent Blaylock with SDG Bible Study. That's the Soli Deo Gloria Bible Study coming to you on this Thursday morning, July the 2nd, 2026. I hope everyone is doing well as we're getting into the month of July, day number 2, and I hope you're ready for the reading of God's Word as we continue reading from the reading plan as it happened. A 1-year walk through the Bible chronologically, then also reading from Daily Doctrine, a 1-year guide to systematic theology. This morning, we're going to be in the book of 2 Kings. We're going to be in chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 4 chapters to read this morning. So let's get after it. Join me as we read God's word together. 2 Kings chapter 5. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man with his master, and highly respected because by him Yahweh had given salvation to Aram. The man was also a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now the Arameans had gone out in marauding bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, I wish that my master were before the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would cure him of his leprosy. Then Naaman went in and told his master, saying, Thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. Then the king of Aram said, Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he went and took in his hand 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold and 10 changes of clothes. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, So now as this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy. Now it happened that when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, Am I God to put to death and to make alive, that this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But know now and see how he is seeking a quarrel against me. Now it happened when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent word to the king, saying, Why have you torn your clothes? Now let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots and stood at the doorway of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored to you, and you will be clean. But Naaman was furious and went away and said, Behold, I said to myself, He will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of Yahweh his God, and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned away. He turned and went away in wrath. Then his servants approached and spoke to him and said, My father, had the prophet spoken with you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, Wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God with all his camp, and came and stood before him and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So now please take a blessing from your servant. But he said, As Yahweh lives, before whom I stand, I will take nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. So Naaman said, If not, please let your servant at least be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer burnt offering, nor will he sacrifice to other gods, but to Yahweh. In this matter, may Yahweh pardon your servant when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. Yahweh, pardon your servant in this matter. He said to him, Go in peace. So he went from him some distance. Then Gehazi, the young man of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, Behold, my master has spared this Naaman the Aramean by not receiving from his hands what he brought. As Yahweh lives, I will run after him and take something from him. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. Naaman saw one running after him, so he came down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is all at peace? And he said, All is at peace. My master has sent me, saying, Behold, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. Then Naaman said, Be pleased to take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of clothes and gave them to 2 of his young men, and they carried them before him. So he came to the hill, and he took them from their hand and deposited them in the house. Then he sent the men away, and they departed. But he came in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" And he said, "Your servant went nowhere." And he said to him, "Did not my heart go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Is it a time to receive money and to receive clothes and olive groves and vineyards and sheep and oxen and male and female slaves? Thus the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your seed forever." So he went out from his presence, a leper as white as snow. 2 Kings chapter 6. The sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "Behold, now the place where we are living is too limited to us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam, and let us make a place there for ourselves where we may live." So he said, "Go." Then one said, "Please be willing to go with your servants." And he answered, "I shall go." So he went with them, and they came to the Jordan and cut down trees. Now it happened that as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. And he said, "Take it up for yourself." So he sent forth his hand and took it. Now the king of Aram was warring against Israel, and he counseled with his servants, saying, "In such and such a place shall be my camp." And the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, saying, "Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Arameans are coming down there." And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, so that he guarded himself there more than once or twice. The heart of the king of Aram was enraged over this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, "Will you not tell me which of us is for the king of Israel?" And one of his servants said, "No, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet who is in Israel tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom." So he said, "Go and see where he is, that I may send and take him." And it was told to him, saying, "Behold, he is in Dothan." So he sent horses and chariots and a heavy military force there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. Then the attendant of the man of God arose early and went out, and behold, a military force with horses and chariots was all around the city. His young man said to him, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" So he said, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Yahweh, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." Yahweh opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. They came down to him, and Elisha prayed to Yahweh and said, "Strike this people with blindness, I pray." So he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Then Elisha said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Walk after me, and I will walk you over to the man whom you seek." He walked them over to Samaria. Now it happened that when they had come into Samaria, Elisha said, "O Yahweh, open the eyes of these men that they may see." So Yahweh opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. Then the king of Israel, when he saw them, said to Elisha, "My father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down?" He said, "You shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and walk back to their master." So he prepared a great feast for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away. They went to their master, and the marauding bands of Arameans did not come again into the land of Israel. It happened afterwards that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, gathered all his military camp and went up and besieged Samaria. Now there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until a donkey's head was shekels of silver. As the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried out to him, saying, "Save my lord, O king." He said, "If Yahweh does not save you, from where shall I save you? From the threshing floor or from the winepress?" The king said to her, "What is the matter with you?" And she said, "This woman said to me, 'Give your son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow.'" So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, give your son that we may eat him. But she had hidden her son. Now it happened that when the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes. Now he was passing by on the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth beneath on his body. And he said, may God do so to me, and more also. The head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today. Now Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a man from his presence, but before the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, do you see how this son of a murderer has sent to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold the door shut against him. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? While he was still speaking with them, behold, the messenger came down to him, and he said, behold, this evil is from Yahweh. Why should I wait for Yahweh any longer? 2 Kings chapter 7. Then Elisha said, listen to the word of Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh, about this time tomorrow, a seah of fine flour will be sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria. The royal officer on whose hand the king was leaning answered the man of God and said, behold, if Yahweh should make windows in heaven, could this thing be? Then he said, behold, you will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat of it. Now there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, why do we sit here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, then the famine is in the city, and we will die there. And if we sit here, we die also. So now come, and let us go over to the camp of the Arameans. If they spare us, we will live, and if they put us to death, we will die. So they arose at twilight to go to the camp of the Arameans. Then they came to the outskirts of the camp of the Arameans, but behold, there was no one there. Now the Lord had caused the camp of the Arameans to hear a sound of chariots and a sound of horses, even the sound of a great military force, so that they said to one another, behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the king of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Therefore they arose and fled in the twilight and forsook their tents and their horses and their donkeys, even the camp just as it was, and they fled for their life. So these lepers came to the outskirts of the camp and entered one tent and ate and drank. Then they carried from there silver and gold and clothes. They went and hid them, and they returned and entered another tent and carried them from there also and went and hid them. And they said to one another, we are not doing right. This day is a day of good news, but we are keeping it silent. If we wait until morning light, punishment will overtake us. So now come, let us go and tell the king's household. So they came and called to the gatekeepers of the city, and they told them, saying, we came to the camp of the Arameans, and behold, there was no one there, nor the voice of man, only the horses tied and the donkeys tied, and the tents just as they were. The gatekeepers called and told it within the king's household. Then the king arose in the night and said to his servants, I will now tell you what the Arameans have done to us. They know that we are hungry. Therefore, they have gone from the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, when they come out of the city, we will capture them alive and get into the city. And one of his servants answered and said, please let some men take 5 of the remaining horses which remain in the city. Behold, they will be in any case like all the multitude of Israel who remain in it. Behold, they will be in any case like all the multitude of Israel who have already come to an end. So let us send and see. They took therefore 2 chariots with horses, and the king sent after the camp of the Arameans, saying, go and see. Then they went after them to the Jordan, and behold, all the way was full of clothes and equipment, which the Arameans had thrown away in their haste. Then the messengers returned and told the king. So the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. Then a seah of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, according to the word of Yahweh. Now the king appointed the royal officer on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. But the people trampled on him at the gate, and he died, just as the man of God had spoken, who spoke when the king came down to him. So it happened just as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, and a seah of fine flour for a shekel will be sold tomorrow about this time at the gate of Samaria. The royal officer had answered the man of God and said, Now behold, if Yahweh should make windows in heaven, could such a thing be? And he said, Behold, you will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat of it. And so it happened to him, for the people trampled on him at the gate, and he died. 2 Kings chapter 8. Now Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go with your household and sojourn wherever you can sojourn. For Yahweh has called for a famine, and it will even come on the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the word of the man of God, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. Now it happened at the end of 7 years that the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went out to cry out to the king for her house and her field. Now the king was speaking with Gehazi, the young man of the man of God, saying, Please recount to me all the great things that Elisha has done. Now it happened as he was recounting to the king how he had restored to life the one who was dead, that behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life was crying out to the king for her house and for her field. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. Then the king asked the woman, and she recounted it to him. So the king appointed for her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the produce of the field from the day that she left the land, even until now. Then Elisha came to Damascus. Now Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, was sick, and it was told to him, saying, The man of God has come here. The king said to Hazael, Take a present in your hand, and go to meet the man of God, and inquire of Yahweh by him, saying, Will I be restored to life from this sickness? So Hazael went to meet him and took a present in his hand, even every kind of good thing of Damascus, 40 camels loads. And he came and stood before him and said, Your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to you, saying, Will I be restored to life from this sickness? Then Elisha said to him, Go, say to him, You will surely be restored to life. But Yahweh has shown me that he will certainly die. And he fixed his gaze steadily on him until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. Then Hazael said, Why does my Lord weep? Then he said, Because I know the evil that you will do to the sons of Israel. Their fortifications you will set on fire, and their young men you will kill with the sword, and their infants you will dash in pieces, and their pregnant women you will rip up. Then Hazael said, But what is your servant, who is but a dog, that he should do this great thing? Elisha answered, Yahweh has shown me that you will be king over Aram. So he went from Elisha and came to his master, and he said to him, What did Elisha say to you? And he said to me that you would surely be restored to life. Now it happened that on the following day he took the cover and dipped it in water and spread it on his face. So he died, and Hazael became king in his place. Now in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, became king. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done. For the daughter of Ahab became his wife, and he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. However, Yahweh was not willing to make Judah a ruin for the sake of David, his servant, since he had promised him to give a lamp to him through his sons always. In his days, Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah and made a king over themselves. Then Joram crossed over to Zair, and all his chariots with him, and he arose by night and struck the Edomites who were surrounding him and the commanders of the chariots, but his army fled to their tents. So Edom revolted against Judah to this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. Now the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Ahaziah his son became king in his place. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, became the king. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. He also walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, like the house of Ahab had done, because he was a son-in-law of the house of Ahab. Then he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to war with Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth Gilead, and the Arameans struck Joram. So King Joram returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Arameans had caused by striking him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Aram. Then Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text this morning. We'll move on to the reading from Daily Doctrine. Day 183, Three Uses of the Law. The Heidelberg Catechism is largely composed of three elements: the Apostles' Creed, Lord's Day 7:22, the Ten Commandments, Lord's Day 34 to 44, and the Lord's Prayer, Lord's Day 45 to 52. In covering these traditional elements, Heidelberg famously uses three section headings: guilt, grace, and gratitude, or less alliteratively, misery, deliverance, and thankfulness. It's worth noting, as many have, that the Catechism includes its exposition of the law in the section on gratitude, not in the section on guilt. This choice reflects the widespread Reformed belief in what has come to be known as the third use of the law. The first use of the law is to show us our guilt, convict us of sin, and lead us to Christ. The second use of the law is given to restrain wickedness through fear of punishment for disobedience. The third and principal use of the law, as Calvin put it, is an instrument to learn God's will. The law doesn't show us our sins so we might be drawn to Christ. It shows us how to live as though we belong to Christ. In one sense, Christians are no longer under the law. We are under grace. Romans chapter 6, verse 14. We have been released from the law, Romans chapter 7, verse 6, and its tutelage, Galatians 3. On the other hand, having been justified by faith, we uphold the law, Romans chapter 3, verse 31. Even Christ recoiled at the idea of coming to abolish the law and the prophets, Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Christians are free from the law in the sense that we are not under the curse of the law. Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes, Romans chapter 10, verse 4. Nor is the law a nationalized covenant for us like it was for Israel. But the law in general, and the Ten Commandments in particular, still give us a blueprint for how we ought to live. The Ten Commandments were central to the ethics of the New Testament. Jesus repeated most of the second table of the law to the rich young man, Mark chapter 10, verses 17 to 22. The Apostle Paul repeated them too, Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10, and used them as a basis for his moral instruction to Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 8 through 11. There can be no doubt that the commandments, even under the new covenant, are holy and righteous and good, Romans chapter 7, verse 12. We obey the commandments, therefore, not in order to merit God's favor, but out of gratitude for his favor. Don't forget that the Ten Commandments were given to Israel after God delivered them from Egypt. Law was a response to redemption, not a cause of it. We must never separate law from gospel. In one sense, the law shows us our sin and leads us to the gospel. But in another sense, the law ought to follow the gospel just as the giving of the Decalogue followed salvation from Egypt. Likewise, Ephesians chapter 2 first explains salvation by grace and then instructs us to walk in the good deeds prepared for us. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. Romans first explains justification and election and then tells us how to live in response to these mercies. Romans chapter 12, verse 1. In short, we obey the law in gratitude for the gospel. As Louis Berkhoff observed, we distinguish between the law and the gospel, but always as the two parts of the Word of God as a means of grace. And that's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text and also Daily Doctrine this morning. We Covered a lot of ground in Second Kings as we saw Elijah in action with Naaman and making the axe head float. And then we saw the interaction with the Arameans and the siege on the city, and the people were fretting and fearing for their lives because of the famine that was imposed on them because they couldn't get food into the city. And then God moving mightily and the Arameans just fleeing from nothing. And then we saw in Daily Doctrine, we understand that the law is given to us, but as followers of Christ, we follow the law out of gratitude, not out of service or fear. Beautiful thought. Hope you have a blessed day. Soli Deo Gloria.